It is a new world and a new season in the NBA eventually, but where do the Magic stand? How did they find themselves where they are? And what are they going to do this season? We're going to get to all that today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is August 4th. It will be August 5th, 2026. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic is part one of our conversation with Keith Smith of Spotrac. We're just going to update where the Magic stand in the terms of the salary cap and how this team moves forward, how we got to this point, the issues the Magic are facing, why the Magic summer was so quiet, and what the Magic need to prove and accomplish this season. Today's episode is going to be very Magic-centric. Tomorrow we'll be back with Keith. We'll talk about league-wide issues that the Magic and every other team are facing. So a great wide-ranging conversation for you with Keith Smith of Spotrac coming up for you here in the next 2 days. Very, very excited for it. So let's dive right in. And we are joined for our regular, it's 2-3 times a year now, Keith, sort of a preseason, sort of a trade deadline, offseason. We're joined by the great Keith Smith of Spotrac to talk about the Orlando Magic and everything Orlando Magic, from the financial side to the court side, as we start to kind of build the battle lines of what this season is for the Orlando Magic. And it feels like a significant season where the Magic really have to show something. So Keith, first off, welcome to the show. I want to start here with some of the intel you got. You did your great little kind of empty the notebook on the Eastern and Western Conference over at Spotrac. Definitely suggest everyone go read that. And there's a lot of great nuggets in there, but you spoke to some Magic executives that were out there in Vegas, and they echoed a lot of what I think we've heard publicly from them, that they just feel last year was about injuries, and injuries were the big thing, and changing coaches is enough. What was your impression on how the Magic felt like they needed to address this offseason and how this team pushes forward after what was a disappointing season last year?
Yeah, I think the Magic, without saying it, because they're never going to come out and say it this way, they made the first move every team makes, which is you change the coach. That's almost always the first change you make before you make large sweeping changes to your roster. So I think for them, unless you're like going into a rebuild, but that's something different. And I think for the Magic, they feel like Sean Sweeney coming in, combined with better health, that will lift them to a better place in the Eastern Conference. Now, what's funny is the East got better this year, got better, get deeper. There's only a couple bad teams in the East, and even the bad teams can't be like the normal bad teams we've been used to, where it's like, who cares if we win 20 games because it doesn't matter, we're not even trying. Now you have to put a baseline level of effort out, so you may not, Magic fans know it used to be like Tuesdays in Orlando is where you go to stack a win because they stink and they were bad for a decade. Now, like, they're a good team, but even like the Tuesdays in Chicago aren't going to be a guaranteed win because they're going to be at least a baseline level of competence. So that would be interesting. But in my discussions with Magic folks, it was very much like, yeah, we're excited to have Sean, and we think if the team is healthy, we're going to be a much better team than what we showed last year. And it's kind of hard to argue against that. I think, the one argument I would make is like, all right, well, we're putting a lot of hope in Sean Sweeney then. Personally, I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be a really good coach for them, but we don't know because he hasn't done the job yet. So that part we'll find out on. But I think the rest of it is, yeah, let's see where it kind of goes with that. And then the health part, yeah, if you can get healthier, these guys are pretty good. There's a lot of talent on this team, and it's a pretty good group, and they kind of have a fairly solid identity of what they want to be as a team. So I think that part is hard to argue against.
Yeah, and I do think people lose sight of that. Like, I mean, maybe this is some coping for whatever it is, but they still
Sure.
won 45 games last year.
Yep.
They finished a game behind Toronto and Atlanta. I know Atlanta fans are still a little salty about the Magic losing that game in Boston because that dropped them from 5-6, put them up against the Knicks. No one wanted to face the Knicks. Knicks actually wanted Toronto. The Knicks weren't happy about that either. But they
And the Knicks were down in that series, if we remember back, right?
Yeah.
There's the last kind of bad moment for the Knicks in the playoffs, but
yeah. So like they weren't that. I mean, they were still 5 games behind Cleveland for 4th, and that's where they ultimately wanted to be. But they're down so bad. And so I do think people are a little lower on this team than they should be. At the same time, like the Magic didn't deliver what they needed to deliver last year. And like you said, the East is better. Now I would argue the Magic made their move for Desmond Bane. It wasn't just for last year. Like they made that move thinking we're going to be good and be among the East elite for the next 3-4 seasons, during the life of the rest of that Desmond Bane contract, certainly during the life of all the picks that they gave up. And so I feel like the Magic shouldn't be afraid of the rest of the Eastern Conference. Like, I would argue to people, like, one of the reasons the East is so good is the Magic as the 8 seed are capable of being they're capable of doing what Detroit did last year. Like,
sure.
Why not? Now, again, is that enough? But should last season have brought a little bit more urgency? Like, obviously, cap wise, they were limited. They could only really do the minimum contracts that they did, and we'll discuss, whether they maximize that or not. But should the Magic have been so complacent? And Jeff Weltman's been a very patient guy. He's stuck with this roster through thick and through thin with all the known weaknesses this team has. Is there something to say like the Magic should have been a little bit more aggressive about moving some pieces and trying something new with a new coach now in tow?
Sure. I get where you're coming from with that. I guess my question is going to be,
what is it?
Yeah, like what would that move have been, right? Mm-hmm. I think the easy one everybody goes to is like they should have traded Wendell Carter, and fine. And I think the only reason people go there is nobody wants to trade Banchero or Franz. I guess we could just call him Wagner now because he's the only one left. But like nobody really wants to trade Suggs because another drafted and developed guy. And then Bane, they just got him, and Bane was, quite frankly, I think he was the Magic's best player last season.
He's my MVP last year.
Yeah, he was really, really good. Unlike every other player they've brought to Orlando in recent vintage, he did not forget how to shoot the basketball, and he continued
only a month.
Yeah. But ultimately, he was good, on the whole, and scored, offered them playmaking, one incredibly durable. I know there was a little bit of silliness at the end of the season, but could have played in that game if he had needed to. So I think all around we're in a place where, like, what was the move? Was it like unless you were going to move one of those 4 guys, I don't know that you were getting the kind of monster return that would have got people fired up and excited. Just Wendell Carter and then some other salary outgoing wasn't going to return you like this. Oh my gosh. And if it did, it almost would have had to have been a center because the other 4 guys are locked in the 1 through 4. So you're really in a position where there. Now, I think if we are, let's say we're 11 months from now, or maybe even 10 months from now, it's the beginning of June, and we're having a similar type conversation of, man, the Magic, they were good, but they weren't quite good enough. Now it's time to start talking about one of those 4 guys has to go because you're going to have to do something different because, and I know the front office crew got their extensions as well, but you made the coach change. All right. As the old saying goes, you can't fire all the players, so you fire the coach. Well, you kind of did that. Now your next part of this is, all right, then it's going to have to be now the players that start to change because otherwise what happens is you're not going to be the ones making the decisions anymore because the extension or not, they're going to get somebody else different in there to make some of those decisions. And I know some of the national perspective might be with the Magic of, well, they're content to just be get in the playoffs every year. That's good enough for them. But we both know, being around a lot of people there, it's not. They want to win. They want to win at the highest level possible. So I think for them it is, hey, let's go. And you don't, as an ownership group, and we'll keep any other stuff, just simply how they own the Magic. You don't commit to the amount of money they've committed to unless you're committed to trying to win. So I think what we're really looking at here now going forward is, all right, so we've got the teams locked in. If they don't get it done this year as a group, we're going to start to see changes. And that could even come down, if it's not getting done when we get to February and the trade deadline, we could start to see changes start getting made by then.
It's I want to build on that point because it's obviously sort of a new day for the Magic. Like, they spent the whole 2000s avoiding the tax like the plague, even though they had a All NBA player in Tracy McGrady, and he probably deserved to be in the tax. Obviously he had to dance around Grant Hill's salary, but
sure,
this is the first time the Magic have paid the tax since 2012, and there's no avoiding that like they did last year when they were able to duck underneath it. Let's take a quick break from our conversation so we can say a quick word from our friends over at BetterHelp. BetterHelp has been a widely used online therapy platform, and today the focus is on why so many people continue to choose it. If you're curious, you can actually see what people are saying by visiting betterhelp.com/reviews, where real customer reviews are updated every day. BetterHelp has an average live therapy session rating of 4.9 out of 5 based on more than 1.7 million client session reviews. And hearing directly from people who have used the service helps paint a clearer picture of why so many continue to recommend it. More than 6 million people globally have used BetterHelp. To get started, you answer a few questions, get matched with a therapist based on your needs, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time. BetterHelp therapists have at least 3 years and 1,000 hours of hands-on experience, along with required education, training, and certifications. If you're not sure therapy is for you, that's okay. This gives you a chance to try it out, to get your feet wet in a no-pressure situation. And again, if the therapist is not right for you, they have so many to turn to. They're great. Obviously, there are all these reviews, but the most important review is your own. And BetterHelp listens to you on that front to make sure you find the help and the guidance and the therapist that you need. See the reviews, see what stands out, and see if BetterHelp is right for you. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. You mentioned it, like to pay this kind of payroll, and there's what, 2 teams maybe that are going to be second apron next year. Cleveland, when they signed James Harden.
It's only Denver.
It's only Denver. Cleveland, when they sign James Harden, is probably gonna jump
close
in there too. Yeah, they'll be close. Like, the Magic are what, about $2.5 million under the second apron.
Yep.
How much pressure should that put on this season? And are the, like, I'm just honestly a big believer, just having watched enough, you got to be proactive about things. Like, the way you got a great deal for Nikola Vucevic back in 2021 is you traded him when no one thought he was available. Desmond Bane cost so much because you had to make an offer to make him available. Reacting is always always gets you stuck. And it's not that it's not that the Magic are it's not that the Magic weren't prepared to be this expensive, but knowing I don't know how you feel. I looked at last year's team and I was like, yes, the injuries knocked them down a tier. They went from fighting for the 4 seed to in the 5, 6, 7, 8 range. I still looked at that team. I was like, this isn't a championship team yet. Like, they clearly need something else, whether it's a point guard, whether it's shooting, whether it's better rim protection. Like everybody knows this team's problems. Why shouldn't the Magic have been proactive then and said, yeah, we'll put Jalen Suggs at $30 on the table, if anything, to split him into a starting level point guard or a starting level center and some more depth, and then move some other pieces around to just kind of get out in front of all of these issues that are going to come to a head this summer, especially with the Anthony Black extension also hanging over them.
Yeah, I think
it's tough. It's tough.
No, it really is. And I think the answer to that is they wanted to do one more year with this group with a new head coach. And I think that I I know that sounds like such a simple answer, but sometimes answers are simple like that. And I think it was, let's give this group one more chance. And again, I think if it's the end of the season, if it's the middle of the season, if they are just kind of scuffling along as just another good team, but not quite good enough, then I definitely think we're in a position where what we see with the Magic is now it has to change. If we're another year into Jalen Suggs is only going to play 55 games or whatever, and Jalen Suggs is just going to kind of go on a little quick side point here. After somebody watched Marcus Smart for his entire career with the Celtics, I think we're at the point with Jalen Suggs where the Magic are going to have to be like, we got to save you from yourself a little bit, where his all-out style is just going to lead to a missing time. Like, it's just the reality of the way he plays. And I know we all love the former football player and all that stuff, and he plays like that still, but all that's leading to is him getting hurt all the time. And he is picking up injuries that are like contact injuries, or this happened because he dove on the floor, or like sprinted all out. And it's like, hey, dude, it's December 3rd, and we didn't need to jump into the third row to save that loose ball. Like, that's one where you got to let it go. And if you won't let it go, you know what? Have a seat on the bench for a minute here, and let's like have a conversation. And that's where it sucks, because you don't want to change it. But if he keeps getting hurt, that's where it is. Now, Franz's injuries, I feel like they're just, I mean, if that dude could pick up these oddball injuries, he's been picking them up. And I think it's just weird stuff that's caused it. And I know he himself said, I shouldn't have come back from the high ankle sprain when I did. And I think that kind of, I mean, not even kind of, I think that ruined the remainder of his season. Doing that. And if we had a time machine, he'd probably go back and be like, all right, I'll go out, I'll play the first minute, and I'll lightly jog up and down, and then that's it. I played at home instead of actually trying to play. But anyway, so I think the simple answer is, let's give this group one more opportunity as a group, and we're going to see where we go. And if it continues to be a mess, and it's injury filled and everything else, then it has to change. And you referenced the real reason it has to change. This team is 17.5 million roughly into the luxury tax. They're projected to be over the luxury tax next season already without Anthony Black on the books. Like, once you figure that out, then if you're going to fill out your roster, you're going to be just as deep, if not even deeper, into the luxury tax. 2 years from now, they're only 9 million under the luxury tax. I mean, this is a team that is set up to be very, very expensive. We've seen teams that are better and have accomplished a lot more than the Magic have break up, or at least start the process of breaking up over the last couple of seasons, because you just can't be that expensive. Now, they're going to do everything they can. Everybody has asked me, like, when are they going to fill the 15th spot? Are they going to fill the 15th spot? And I'm like, I don't know, March, April. Like, they'll fill it then, because you always do.
Mercenary market.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not doing anything immediately. They've got their two-way guys. They'll cycle through two-way guys. They believe in their depth, and I think their depth is probably a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. But
their depth is good when they're healthy.
As long as the main five are there,
yes,
then the depth is good. You start getting into this guy should have been our third guy, is now our backup guy. It starts to get a little messy. But I think, really with the Magic, I think we're in a position where, all right, let's kind of get back out there. Let's see if we can keep this group on the floor, and let's see where it goes. And then there's a lot of other things, like, can we get Paolo to be a little bit more efficient? And is he more efficient if he is playing with other better players? Does Vooch give them the stretch element that they've kind of been missing from that position? Because with Carter, it's very hit or miss. It kind of comes and goes with him, and he's not always there with that element. Now I think they've got kind of between those two and Batadze and Isaac, if he plays any at the 5 or at the 4, like, you've got 48 minutes of really good big man play that you should be good. The wing group is, relatively solid with development. I think they're behind Bane. It's a little messy, but that's where it's kind of Bane, Black, and Suggs are like the 3-guard trio. So I'm not too worried they're going to figure that out with those 3 guys. So I think it's a pretty good grouping. But yeah, it's a very long answer, a very simple question, but the answer is, I think they just wanted to give this group one more crack at it.
The problem of finding clothes that you can live in all day, be comfortable, and do whatever you need to do, whether it's just chilling, going to meetings, playing golf, being on the move, that problem has been solved by Cozy Earth. The everyday polo is the answer. It's lightweight, built to move with you, just easy to wear everywhere. I've got it on right now, and it's fabulous. Plus, the Cozy Earth Essential Socks, they're exactly what the name suggests. Soft, supportive, comfortable enough that you stop thinking about them halfway through the day. Plus, Cozy Earth backs everything with a 10-year warranty and hassle-free returns. So if something isn't quite right, you're covered. That makes trying them for yourself an easy decision. I've got the Cozy Earth Everyday Polo in blue and in black. Check them out at CozyEarth.com. Use the code LOCKEDON for 20% off. That's right, Locked On for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, please mention you heard about it right here, CozyEarth.com.
And look, that's rare. Like I think everyone can kind of recognize, and this Magic group really since the Vooch trade has, they've broken pieces apart. Like Markelle Fultz is gone, Cole Anthony's gone,
Sure,
but they've essentially been together now for 5 years, which is very, very rare. And I think everyone, they haven't experienced anything else, but they understand that this is a lot of faith, but it's also a lot of pressure to perform.
Yeah.
And, there's obviously like multiple ways to build a team in the NBA now. Like there's no one way to do this thing. And, we'll talk more league-wide trends in a little bit too, but I'm curious what your thought on is this. The way Jeff Weltman has operated really his entire 10 years, is I'm going to take care of my guys. Like one of his first moves was signing Vooch to a new extension. They signed Aaron Gordon to a big extension. They signed Jonathan Isaac to a big extension, and then another extension on top of that. Cole Anthony got his deal. Like everyone he's drafted essentially, except for Chet Howard, has gotten a deal to stay with the team. You're supposed to draft guys that you believe in. And those guys are supposed to play well and build your championship team. The Thunder have done that, to some extent. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was obviously brought in a trade, and it's hard to compare different teams. But I often feel like when I look at Jeff Weltman's tenure, these last 10 years, I find it very hard to say there are mistakes in isolation where like any one move was like, oh, that didn't make any sense. There's no Brandon Jennings trade in this group. But I also look at it and total and say, this is still a very flawed team that has ambitions and is very good. Like I think people who side with the Magic are still, they're a postseason team. They're going to be in that. They should be in that 10. That's no guarantee, but they should be in that 10. They should be in that 8, to be perfectly honest. When you look at how Jeff Weltman operates and how the Magic got into this situation where we're going to see this team break up in some capacity, even if they are successful, I don't think it's avoidable because of the payroll and because of the second apron restrictions and all that. How do you assess how Jeff Weltman has done building this team and sticking with this roster, even if the results haven't like flown in the way that everyone would think?
Yeah, I think his trades have largely been pretty good. I don't have any real issue with any of them. There's a lot of smaller ones in there that those are whatever, but I think the big
got
stuff,
Bol for nothing.
Yeah. I think the big stuff has been good. I think the Vooch trade, the fact that Wendell Carter's still here and still a viable starting center in Orlando, good stuff. And you got Franz out of that. So that is, also there. Then you have, you look at the trade for Desmond Bane. I know they gave up a lot, but I still think that was a good deal. And I think his drafting has been really solid. When you can kind of point to Jett Howard is the only for sure miss that they've had, that's pretty good Like, and especially recently, they're not drafting in the top 5 or 6 anymore. Like, it's Paolo was a really good pick. Franz was a really good pick. Isaac's career has been very weird, but I still, I think that was the right pick at the time. And there's a world where all the stuff with him injury wise doesn't happen. And Jonathan Isaac, we're talking about, is one of the better forwards in the league today. The more recent picks, I think Tristan Da Silva is going to still turn out to be a pretty good one. Anthony Black obviously is turning out to be a really solid pick. So I think, kind of the true tenets of team building, especially in this era of the NBA, which are trades and drafts, I think they've done really well. And I think, to your point of sticking with the guys, they didn't get impatient. They didn't win a few games one year and then be like, all right, we're going to trade one of the, Paolo or Franz to get, somebody better in here. And we'll give all this stuff up. Like, they did a really good job of just, we're going to kind of stay the course. We're going to stay the course. Now, they've paid everybody, and that part is starting to come home to roost. This is the first year we're really going to feel it, that they've got, multiple guys, I say, making $40 million. I know that's not exactly right, but Desmond Bane's pretty close to making $40 million.
They got 4 guys making 30.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's like 4 or 5 teams that have that much committed to 4 guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in a place where, all right, well, Bane's contract is one you traded for, but the other 3 you gave out. So you actively went and got those 4 contracts where they're probably fine, right? I think the value for all 4 of those guys is fine. I don't have any issue with all of them. Carter, his extension's probably a little bit of an overpay. I'd rather it be $3-4 million less, but not the end of the world. But when you look at it as, all right, well, it's Carter, Batadze, and Vooch for combined, what does that work out to? About a combined
27, 20, not even $30 million. Not even 30.
Like, that's great, right? That's $10 million per center. You're actually okay.
Yeah.
There. So, Vooch is the first time they've really kind of had to hit on a minimum signing, because they really haven't been in that place. That spot's always been kind of filled-ish in another way. So let's see. And then I think in general, I think they've done a pretty good job. The problem is all of the contracts can be fine value, but if they don't all come together, then that's where it all falls apart. And it's not to be a broken record, but that's why this is the last year for this group. If they don't make a real playoff run, by a real playoff run, I would say you're in a very competitive second round series, or you're in the conference finals.
The way I've, not to interrupt, but the way I've described really the last 3 seasons is the goal is you need to be pointing toward a championship.
Yeah.
Like to me, you had the breakthrough in 2024. You played the Cavs really tough. And it was like, okay, the next season you add a nice veteran in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Like, that's certainly a free agent signing that didn't work out. Like, we can all admit that. Yeah. And it was a big one because I was like, their last time with cap room, but that's how they got Desmond Bane in the end. But the next year was, we got to see this team against a championship team and see where they're at. And obviously injuries hit that team. They lucked in and played a really good Celtics team. And I think generally everyone was like, they played that Celtics team really tough. They didn't have the horses that year to compete with a team that good. Jalen Suggs was hurt. It add something to that mix, and this team's kind of in the mix. And even honestly, I don't know how you felt, especially just looking back at what happened this summer. I kind of felt like if the Magic had lost to the Pistons in 5, we would have started seeing these changes. Yeah. And I think the fact that the Magic took a 3-1 lead against a 60-win 1-seed Pistons that were fully healthy. Cade Cunningham was still working his way back from injury. I'll grant that. But they took a 3-1 lead and looked dominant. Like, I honestly, I had back and forth with Kuka Hill of Locked On Pistons. And I was like, honestly, dude, I think every question in this series has been asked of the Pistons, and the Magic are just kind of there hanging out. And they just look like the better team. And it wasn't until Franz got hurt, and I was like, okay, the Magic have something they got to figure out that they just don't have an answer for yet. I think people, because of how traumatic the end of that series was, forget how good Orlando was in that series. And it felt like that was proof of concept that we're actually much closer than everyone thinks we are.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that's why I think it is the blown 3-1 lead where you can argue like they were the 8th seed. They're not even supposed to be up 3-1. But the reality is they were, and like you said, they're a 45 win team. That's not a normal 8 seed, right? Like that's part of the East just getting better.
It's gonna be this year.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah. I mean, the East is gonna be strong. But I think it's when you look at it, like they were not your normal 8 seed, like this the Suns were the 8th seed in the West. Suns got to the playoffs. Suns were a good team, and then they promptly got destroyed by the Thunder. Now, I'm not saying the Thunder and Pistons are on the same level, but that's more of what happens in a 1-8 series.
What happened in the Magic Celtics series is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Magic presented
You're
some
in it,
issues, but they were nowhere near good enough.
And then I think that's why it is what was the blown series lead? Like if we'd done this, and this as a team, which then you put on the coach. And all right, we change the coach. Let's see where this goes. And Sean Sweeney's a guy who's been assistant coaches go through this where it's like they're the next guy for like 4 or 5 years until they're finally the guy. And then Jamal Mosley went through it too. He was like the next guy up. And I will say this with Jamal Mosley. Jamal Mosley was the exact right coach for the Magic when they hired him. They needed somebody to come in, be energetic, be a little bit more serious about, hey, we're going to try to be really good defensively. And we're going to try to have something.
Give the team purpose when losses are piling up.
Yeah, something we can lean on every single night. And that was going to be the defense. And now with Sean Sweeney, it is, right, he's coming in and it is, all right, help take us to the next level. And I know I've seen all the stuff, and I've actually had friends who love the Magic here in town been like, isn't he just Jamal Mosley like all over again? He's very different. Like, and it's there's a lot of ways he is very different, but I think he's also a much better. He's got kind of this like pigeonholed as being a defensive coach because that's what he was the last couple of stops. But before that, it was like this guy's a really good offensive coach too, and that's going to be ultimately what it comes down to. The Magic under Mosley, I think what happened was he started here and the team was here. Then the team caught up and then they got to even. Now they were here and he couldn't get any further. Like he's just not a good offensive coach. There was little to no creativity. I mean, by the end of the Pistons series, you knew exactly what they were going to run. It was just going to be if Detroit defended it well enough, they were going to get a stop. If they didn't, the Magic were going to score. And the reality was there was nothing else they could go to. And again, some of that, injury and whatnot. But I think this is where with this Magic team, when I really look at it, it is, like we said, we're really in a position where it's now you've got the coach. Let's see where all this goes. And if it doesn't get done, then it's going to be probably a decision no one is going to like. But it's probably going to be Franz or Suggs who goes. Maybe it'll even be both because you may be in a position where it's like you said before, do you split Suggs up into 2 contracts and 2 players who can help you that make $15 million a piece? And that's where you go. That's great, but you're still exactly where you were against the cap and the aprons and the tax and all that. So then it becomes, all right, well, can we take Franz's $40 million? That becomes a $30 million, two $15 million players. We save $10 million and we fleshed out our depth and we get players that are maybe going to be a little bit more healthy. And this is where I always say it's not about just collecting talent, right? It has to be talent that fits, talent that can play together. And I know everybody screams and yells about like, God, they need a real point guard. And I always question, I'm like, what is a real point guard anymore? Like, what is that? Right?
Yeah.
We don't have those.
They need guys that can get their stars the ball in easier spots.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
And they also need somebody who can. I think this is where the fact that all these guys are roughly the same age, and maybe Bane will take on it's year 2. Maybe it'll take on a little bit more of a voice, but you need somebody who can come in and tell Paolo, hey, dude, 8 contested 18 footers after 25 dribbles ain't it.
Yeah.
Like get on the block. Or you know what? Let's run a pick and roll where you roll and I'll get you the ball.
It's the organization stuff.
Yeah. That's it. You need somebody who could come in, kind of tell those guys that. That's where, but like the old school, like we need a Chris Paul point guard. Yeah. Well, they don't exist anymore. And he's retired now too. So like it's not really a thing. Like point guards are now scorers who can also play make. But But yeah, that's where I think, for so long the Magic had been got to keep the ball in Paolo's hands and Fran's hands. And I think now with Bane, they have a guy I'm looking forward to this year. Bane kind of being a little more, hey, no, you get out of my way. Like, I've got this. Like, I was the one who was here every single night last year, helping drive these wins. Let's kind of go. Not in a bad way. Like,
No.
everybody's going to take that as like selfish, but it's going to be like, hey, I got this, and I'm going to run a pick and roll with Wendell Carter Jr., but the whole goal is to get Franz an open jump shot. Like,
Yes.
right, that's the goal of the play, and we're going to work there. And I think all these guys are smart enough, good enough. I think the other thing too is
and I think there's a lot of unselfishness too. Like these guys do want to win, and they do want to make it work. And they're like,
that's it, Phil. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
These guys know this is the last chance, right? They know if we don't get it done this year as a group, it's not. We're not going to be a group anymore. Like, there will be major changes that happen with this. And guys will be moved on from. So that's exactly it. We're going to the exact same spot where it is. These guys want to win, and I think they all know if we don't get it done this year, this is it. Like, we will not be the same Orlando Magic a year from now.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to like the point of like, who do you trade? Like a Paolo or Franz trade is probably more about recouping some draft capital as much as it is getting back an anchor player to kind of replace them. But like
recouping draft capital and getting off some salary.
Yeah, but like the Magic are also in this weird spot where like this is the only year they get to play the new lottery if they wanted to play the new lottery, because their pick is owed to Memphis the next 2 years in some capacity. They really can't bottom out unless Memphis is involved and they get their picks back. They can't bottom out until 2031 when they get their picks back. So they're going to be playing to stay competitive. They're not going to, tanking is different now anyway, but they're going to stay competitive. Before we turn to some league-wide issues, which we'll tackle in part 2 of our conversation. So we'll pause, reset, and do that in a minute. The last remaining business of this offseason is Anthony Black. And it's kind of this shadow that's hanging over everything. I'm not good with contracts. Like, I've been pitching like 4 for 93. I think that's a $23 million AAV or something like that. What should the Magic do with Anthony Black? Is he someone that is primed to kind of go to restricted free agency and say like, hey, prove to us that you could do it again. Your role is sixth man. Prove to us you could do this again. And then the contract we have now will be on the table. Come back and talk to us. Do the Magic have to play a little bit more hardball with him?
Yeah, I think they have to, and that's going to be a little bit out of character. You mentioned it before, but they have done what they can to lock their guys up over the years, both the rookie scale extensions, which is Paolo, Franz, and Suggs, or the veteran extensions like Wendell Carter Jr., Jonathan Isaac in the past got kind of like the opposite. His just ended up being kind of a weird contract, but let's face it, I mean, he's still here, so that shows like they want to take care of their guys. Vooch is back, right? And I think Vooch is I think that was a good pickup for the Magic. I think it's one that's actually, I think we get to the end of the year, and I know I'm going on a side quest here away from your question, but it is, I think when we get to the end of the year, Vooch will end up being one of the best value signings for production versus cap hit at $2.5 million. I bet Vooch minimum produces like he's a $10 million player. I think he'll just be a very solid rotation guy. I'm going to go as far to say, I think there's a world where Vooch is the starting center before all is said and done, just because he adds shooting into the starting group. I think Carter may still play just as much and may play all the important minutes. I think the Magic also need to, if Franz is healthy, you need to really lean into, we're going to put Paolo at the 5 late in games sometimes, or at least late in half, especially if we need to juice the offense or whatever. I think Sean Sweeney also needs to make him play faster. And that's how I'm going to get back to Anthony Black. I think Anthony Black can be a big part of that. I think Anthony Black is a guy I like when he gets the ball and goes. And I think as long as everybody else goes with him, it ends up pretty good. There's been too many times in his first few years where Anthony Black goes, nobody else comes with him, and then he's going like 1-on-4, and it's like, oh, this is a problem. And he runs himself.
For Memphis, there was a problem.
Yeah. So I think for him now, I think he's in a position where it is, hey, let's just like Now, if everybody's going, it'll be good. Now, to your question on the contract, I've kind of pegged right around 20 million as where I would be comfortable with. It starts to go much more than that if on the Magic, and by much more than that, I mean 24 to 25 or higher. I'm going to say, you know what? No hard feelings, but let's see what it looks like next year in restricted free agency. They can still control the process. Because if you lock in for another $25+ million contract, now the other 29 teams are like, man, you just can't. Unless you're winning the title, you cannot be that expensive. We kind of know we've got you. If you leave it open with Black, then it's a little more like, man, what are they going to do there? How's this going to go? And then, quite frankly, too, Anthony Black has been on a pretty steady upward trajectory, but he's had one really good year that we feel really good about. If he can repeat that, all right, maybe he ends up being a little bit more expensive, but now you have another year of data of, all right, you know what, Jalen Suggs, we love him, but he's just not going to be the guy for us. We're going to move on from him. Franz, maybe he's the one who goes. I don't know. We figure all that stuff out, but you don't want to pay him and then have it not come to kind of fruition where it's like, man, now we paid this guy. Now all of a sudden
now we're stuck.
Now we're stuck because we're betting on this. It didn't happen. This is, quite frankly, this is why these jobs are really hard. This is why general managers are paid a lot of money. And their staffs are all paid a lot of money, is to really have these hard conversations. And I don't think there's any world where, unless the Magic are like, we think you're a $10 million player. Which if I'm Anthony Black, I'm like, that's insulting. Now I don't want to be here at all. They're not going to say that to him. So I don't think it's going to be anything where it's going to get antagonistic and he's going to be, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. And quite frankly, he doesn't have the leverage anyway to pull that off. He hasn't been that good. He's barely been a part-time starter in the league, which is not a criticism. It's just a fact of where they're at. But I really love Anthony Black. I it's one of those ones where it's like, this is where we are. And this is not a second apron thing with the Magic either. Yes, that is a consideration, but the Magic were never, even if the second apron didn't exist, the Magic were never going to be a team that was $30 million deep into the luxury tax. They're just not. They're not the Warriors or the Clippers or the Nets or, any of those teams. Like, even if the second apron didn't exist, they were just never going to be that team because they just, and people don't billionaires own it? Yes, they do, but they just weren't going to be.
It's
like, they're not that kind of market.
I tell people this all the time. Yes, they are billionaires. Yes, like when we talk contracts, we're talking monopoly money. But you said they're $17.5 million over the tax. That's still $35 million out the door. That is still a check you have to write. And it is still like sticker shock, even for people who this money is very little in the grand scheme of things. That's still a check you have to write the league or send it to the pool. So like, it's still something you have to worry about and consider. And obviously, like, this stuff does keep the Magic competitive. And this is where I want to take part 2 of our conversations. We're gonna step down now. I'm gonna do my close, do all that. We'll come back. And we're gonna talk about league-wide issues and league-wide trends and where the Magic are kind of fitting into that. We'll be back with that on our next episode here with Keith Smith. As I mentioned, that's where we're going to stop down today. And we're going to be back with Keith Smith on tomorrow's episode of Locked on Magic. We'll talk about NBA issues, league-wide issues, having to do with the salary cap, like what direction the league is going, the parity in the league, just the general excitement for the season ahead. So plenty more with Keith Smith coming up. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation about where the Magic stand and where they are heading. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked on Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the ways to download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked on Magic. Be sure to check out Keith Smith's great work as well at Spotrac. You can find him on Twitter as well as on Blue Sky at Keith Smith NBA. Appreciate Keith again for coming on the show. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Like I said, we are on our summer hours, so not going 5 days a week there. Certainly Still doing 5 days a week here on the pod, but we may scale back to 4 or 3 days depending on what's going on in my life. But we're on our summer hours, so thank you all for sticking with us during the dead part of the NBA season. We'll always be here. These episodes are pretty evergreen until the season begins. As always, as well, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go make your second listen Locked On NBA, because there is no offseason. Wes, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. And we will be back tomorrow with the second part of our interview with Keith Smith, where we chat about league-wide trends, just some more general league talk, and how the Magic kind of fit into that conversation as well. We'll get to that tomorrow. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.